Do you want to know names or anything like that?
Anything.
No, do you want to know our names?
Yeah, that would help.
Go on.
What help? Is it working now then?
Yeah, it's
Oh dear.
It doesn't matter because they'll cut all the bits out at the start, don't we?
Right, okay.
So, you can have your name.
Well, my name's Malcolm Prince.
My name's Sharon Walker.
And what was life like at school?
Well, I started school in 1965 at Old Rivers, the old primary school, which is now lots of new houses by the canal. I don't have a great deal of memories of when I first started there, but my main memories are between the ages of probably 9, 10, 11, just before I was ready to leave to go to secondary school.
I only went to the little school for, what was that also, where was the old one? By Kent's
By Kent's Bridge, yeah.
I only went there for about 6 months, and I moved up to the school that's there now. My memories from school, not really a lot to be fair. I can remember all my friends. We used to do a lot of playing. What was one of the lessons I always remember was one called Social Studies. And if I remember rightly, I've still actually got the book that I did from many years ago. And other than that, just the teachers and the people from school, that's all. So.
Were there any key events that stuck in your mind?
Well, I was very big into sports, so everything to do with sports was always good for me, whether it was sports day or just playtime for playing around and doing sports. But we used to have a field at the back of the school. It was only a very small, narrow field. You used to run alongside the farm, and to be able to play on that as a young child was always. We used to go and get the headmaster's permission, because if it had been raining, we were never allowed on it. So it was always a great event if we went and knocked on the headmaster's door, and he'd come to the door and he would say, "Yes, Malcolm." And I'd say, "Can we go on the big field, sir?" And he would say, yeah, look out the window, and he'd have a look and he'd say, yes. And then I used to remember I would run around the school saying, "Mr. Ayton says we're allowed on the big field." And then we would all congregate on the big field, and to be able to play outside was just, that was probably my favourite memory about the school.
Do you remember any school meals?
I can remember most of them. Only the puddings though. I can remember we used to have Mrs. Greenleaf.
Oh right, yes, I remember Mrs. Greenleaf.
Yes,
yeah.
she was one of the main cooks there, and we always used to have a chocolate slab, and that was always with green mint custard. Then we used to have a jam tart, which was always pink custard, and then the other one was prunes and tapioca, which was not very pleasant at all. But the actual dinners would have, I don't stick in my mind, probably chips.
But these dinners must have been at the new school where it currently is then?
No, I don't remember. I was only there for 6 months.
Right.
Don't remember the dinners there.
Right.
Just at the school that's there now. So.
I can remember there was a school dinner lady called Mrs. Hyde.
Does she live next door to us?
She was not. She lived on Wellfield Road somewhere.
Yeah,
Her name was Mrs.
door,
Hyde,
yeah.
and I'm sure Mrs. Deverell was there as well. There's another, but I can't really remember much about the actual school meals that I ate. I'm not even sure whether I would have gone home or not.
Well, we used to have school dinners probably twice a week. Yeah, you perhaps would have gone home.
I can remember the dinner ladies because I remember the blue overalls that they wore. They wore blue overalls. And they would
Mrs.
stand.
Morris.
No, I
Mrs.
don't remember
Taylor.
Mrs. Morris. No.
I'm a bit younger than you.
It's 10 years difference.
And do you know anything about some of the teachers? Do you remember anything about the teachers?
I could name a lot of them. My favourite teacher was Mrs. Jacks, which I believe went on to teach you, I think, as well. Did she teach you,
Don't
Mrs.
remember.
Jacks?
No, not Mrs. Jacks. I don't think she was there.
Mr. Eastham and Mr. Sheffield. Mr. Sheffield was the first teacher that I'd ever seen with a beard, and in fact, I think he was only the second teacher that was a male teacher at my school, because they were all female teachers Mr. Eastham, I like Mr. Eastham because he would take us to play football over Walk Field. Again, that was another treat. I think he used to think he was better than he actually was, but that was always good fun.
I can remember Mrs. Faircliffe was class 1, Miss Nadine was 2, Miss Rowe was 3.
Oh yes, I remember Mrs. Rowe.
Mrs. Bickley did 4, Mrs. Jones did 5, Mrs. Green did 6, Mrs. Smith did 7, 8 was Mrs. Bates, 9 was Mrs. Hayton, and 10 was Mr. Shears when I was at school.
Right.
They're the one. I don't remember anything. I can remember Mrs. Smith was always, I think she did the PE as well. But other than that, I can't remember anything significant about them. Mrs. Hayton was obviously Mr. Hayton's wife.
That's right. Well, he was the headmaster
He was the
when I
headmaster.
was there.
But I mean, Mrs. Green's still in the village. Mrs. Faircliffe's still in the village, I think. Still see them sometimes. I don't think they'd recognise me though. It's a few years ago now.
No, Mr. Hayton used to always. He was the headmaster when I was at the primary school. Mr. Hayton used to always wear a very small grey jacket, and it was always like cut off at this point. But he could never quite get it done up because he was quite a large gentleman. And the jacket actually it looked more like a work overall. Perhaps if he worked in I won't say a butcher's, but it was a strange thing. That's all he ever wore. I can remember that about him. Quite a stern gentleman,
You obviously spent a lot of time in the headmaster's office.
No, I don't think so particularly. Other than to go and see if we could go on the big field, and then to get the. I was also a milk monitor.
Milk, Arthur.
We used to have crates of milk delivered, little half bottles of milk, only half a pint, and they were delivered in the morning at about 9 o'clock, and then at perhaps 10:30 in the morning, you were allowed to go and as a milk monitor, I could go off and get these crates, and I would take them into the individual classes. And it was a good way to actually get out of my class at that time, whatever class I was in. You have to be in class 10 or 11, whatever it was. But that was a responsibility. So you were going to knock on the door and you bring in the crate. We used to have a little silver cap with a spike in it. You used to have to put a hole in the top of the silver tops, and then give the other children a straw. And that was always quite good. The best thing about that was that we would have perhaps 36 bottles delivered. But some of the classrooms only had 30 children, so there was always 6 bottles left over.
They're only about that big, weren't they?
A little half pint, I think, yeah.
And we used to still have the milk delivered, and the milkmen that delivered our milk now, you worked with
I do. I actually now work with him,
worked
which is
with
strange.
one of the lads
That used to deliver them.
Yeah, but I don't think you get free milk anymore.
No, you don't get free milk in schools anymore, do you?
No.
And in your own time, what do you do as recreation when you're a young child?
At school recreation, at school recreation, I've just been actually in contact with an old friend of mine because in 1969 to 1970, I had 4 friends, and we actually came across an old boys' book of football from 1950. And in the back was a game of football played with a dice and just a little tiddlywink, just a little disc. And we spent an awful lot of time playing that. One of the boys' fathers took the book away, photocopied it, and gave us each our own little board game. And we would play tournaments, and we would play leagues, and we would play FA Cup matches, and we would play World Cup matches. And we would sit around the school. There used to be a little wall all the way around the school. We would sit on this school, and we would play from the start of break to the end of break, madly shaking a dice and then moving his counter across his board until we actually won a game. You could score at each end, and that was a huge part of me and these other 3 people's notes. And then the 3 of us then, or the 4 of us, went on to secondary school at Netherstone, and we would play it on the bus, and we played it probably for about 2.5 years to 3 years in total, for a long period of time, and it was our main recreational together as a board pastime. It was very big. But then obviously all the other things like hide and seek. We used to play hide and seek around the village.
You used to play wide at school? Like 2 teams, and you used to have to... I don't think you can play it anymore because it's now known as British Bulldog.
Yes,
but when we were younger,
it
used to be called wide, and you'd have people on one side and 2 lots of people, wouldn't you, on either side, and you had to get across to the other side. How I remember it was you had one person that was on, and in our school field at the small, it was narrow. It's probably only about 40 yards wide, perhaps half the width of a football field, perhaps even less than that. And you'd all be lined up at one end, and there'd be one person who would be on, and he would be in the middle. And then you all had to run across, and this one person had to try and catch somebody. Yeah.
If he caught them and picked them off the floor for 3 seconds, I think he had to shout something like British Bulldogs 1, 2, 3, and you had to pick them up. And then that person, there'd be then 2 people on, and then you'd be running across. And so gradually there'd be more and more people that would be caught. That was always a
We
huge...
used to play that a lot
all
at,
the time, yeah.
at school.
It used to get quite frantic because you'd obviously get the bigger boys wouldn't get picked up early on. They'd have to wait till they'd perhaps got 10 or 11 people waiting to gang up on them, and these gangs would be saying, "Look, we're going after him this time," like, you know.
Yeah.
But because he was really big and tough, he'd be saying, "You do this again and I'll punch you." And I think the game is banned now.
It is now, but obviously it was different.
Yeah, I think
then.
it is banned. That was a huge part of our sort of play at school.
We used to play a lot of hide and seek around the village as well.
Yeah. Another thing that we used to do, and I'm not sure whether I should actually admit to this, we used to have, when I was about 15 or 16, I would like to think I was younger, but probably wasn't. We used to have what we called a commando run. And this commando run used to start at the back of where the current co-op is in the village. We used to go in the car park behind the co-op and the paper shop, and then from there we would have to go over the hedges behind all the houses that run along Main Street, eventually going behind what was the old Midland Bank, and then eventually coming out by William IV Public House and crossing over the road then and going into the William IV Public car park and over the fences, and eventually coming out at where the old post office, it's now moved the post office, but where the post office currently is.
Used to be.
And this used to be done over all the back gardens in the dark.
We perhaps adapted that to hedge hopping. We used to do that. Yes,
Yeah,
possibly at the
that's-
age of 15, 16.
Something else that used to go on quite a lot because you have to find your own sort of entertainment in the village. So hedge hopping and hedge jumping was something. You would find a hedge in somebody's garden and you had to jump over it.
Yeah.
And obviously if you could jump over 2 or 3. But we had 4 or 5 different what we call commando runs, various areas of the village where if we could get into somebody's back garden, and then it was across people's back garden, hiding behind people's greenhouses and sheds and trying not to make too much noise if we were heard, and then if we were heard, just lying there as still as possible, hoping that nobody would come out.
See, we were quite lucky. We had youth club. We did have a youth club.
Oh, that's right. Yes, you did.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
no,
were quite
didn't- yeah, we
lucky.
did have
The
a-
policeman, we had a local policeman at the time, Ben.
Ben
yeah.
Wilkes.
And he ran a youth club from here, from the village hall, and it was, I'm not sure whether it was 2 or 3 nights a week. I know it was at least 2 nights a week, and they'd got pool table tennis. They used to have a television, and we just used to come down here and hang around down here. I think it was something like 20p, and there was a sweet shop. You could buy your sweets, and we used to just sit drinking coffee and chilling out. And that was probably we were probably doing that up to the age of where we could go in a pub. So we were quite lucky. It was always somewhere to go. Were you a brownie?
I wasn't a brownie. No, I certainly was a cub, and the cubs in the village were a big part of my life as well, because the 4 friends I'm talking about, we all joined the same football team. We played together at the Cubs team, and we travelled all over Lichfield playing games of football against other Cubs teams and various things like that. That was always a good exercise. I never went camping.
I actually went camping with the Scouts, because even though I was a brownie, I didn't actually make it to guides, but my mum was a brown owl and my dad used to help out with the Scouts. So when the Scouts went camping, I used to go camping with the Scouts with my mum and obviously my dad and my brother.
Right,
so we did a couple of camps in Wales. So it was a lot of clubs when we were younger that people got involved in. So
another part of my childhood as well was I say sport. I was very big into sport and all playing games. You have to bear in mind in 1970 we didn't have any computers of any capacity, nothing at all. We had nothing at all. So all our enjoyment was always outside. So to be able to go outside was it. And where I lived in Oakfield Road, we had what was called the green, and it's probably a grassed area. It's about half the size of a football field, perhaps not even that big, is it?
no.
But that we used to always we'd have games of cricket and games of football, and we'd even try and play rugby on this. And there was lots of people from the village, lots of other children that came from the village, because apart from Walk Field at the time, that was sort of the only playing field within the centre of the village. And in Oakfield Road, probably about 9 or 10 children of my age at that time that were around a little cul-de-sac. And we were all best of friends, and we all played, and we would play out from coming home from school at 4 o'clock. We'd stay out till 7:30, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, because later our parents would let us come out. But we never wandered off much, but we loved being outside all the time, and that's where we sort of learned to play our own. And then learning the sports and playing the sports on that field led
got
me
you into it.
Yeah, and it led me into playing cricket at Alder's Cricket Club as a sort of 14, 15, 16-year-old, and then obviously went on to play for the men's teams there as well. So being outdoors, I think, was very important as a youth for me. But then again, we hadn't got
nothing else, had
we
we?
hadn't got
Really?
no computers, we hadn't got no record players.
So it was that you were outside hanging around with your mates, whether it be over Walkfield or sometimes in the bush shelter if it rained, just not causing any trouble or anything like that, just with your friends. It was.
I think I was 40 years of age before I even had a television in any of the bedrooms in any of my houses.
Well, no, I had one, but it was black and white.
No, we had nothing
So
of that.
That makes me sound old.
Nothing of that, no.
Yeah, first television in my bedroom, it was black and white. I bet you wouldn't want one of them, would you?
So, how do you think village life differs for children these days?
I don't live in the village now and I don't have any children, so it's difficult for me to answer that. I think life's changed, not village life's changed, but life in general's changed, so people are different. Whereas Uncle Malcolm said we spent most of our time outside, over Walkfield, hanging around. You've got more opportunities and different opportunities now. So there's still the Brownies, there's Cubs, Scouts, Beavers. I don't think there is a youth club here, is there? Which from my own point of view, growing up with one, is a shame. But I think you'll find the Venture Scouts and all the clubs like that cover that sort of thing anyway.
For me, I think the biggest change has been, I have a son who was brought up in a village as well, but it's the fact that nobody would actually, yes, you still go outside and you still go and walk around the village with your friends, but it was nothing for me and my friends at the age of 13, 14, 15 to get on our push bikes, and we would cycle off to Lichfield and we would cycle off to Burton. Not a problem at all. We were trusted by our parents trusted us, but times have changed now. I'm not sure whether parents would let a 12 or 13 or 14-year-old boy or girl venture off on push bikes up the canal to Fradley and play around the mucky duck around there and then come back and to be told come back at 8 o'clock and come back at 8 o'clock and do that. So that's an aspect that I think has changed. And the youth club, the thing about the youth club not being in the village, I think most young people of today, 14, 15, 16, 17, because they've got all the facilities in the bedroom, they've got the computer and they've got the phones and they've got all the other things that they do. They don't have to go to a youth club to play on any games. It was because they've probably already got them in their own house at some time.
Well, you link on all your computers now, don't you? So
Yes. And that was something. So for me to see my son texting somebody to say, "Are you coming out tonight?" And now I'm staying in and watching telly and discussing what they might or might not do. For me, that was very alien, because for us it was a case of going knocking on people's doors all the time. Are you coming out to play? And then we'd go, let's go and fetch Andy, and we'd go around and fetch Andy. And Andy'd say, yeah, I'll come out in a minute, and then you'd go off and fetch somebody else. And you just gathered that way, and that was the only way we could gather. So the contact that young people have had today, I think, is completely different, which is it.
We used to ring. There used to be a phone box at the bottom of Wellfield Road. There used to be a phone box, I don't know if it's still there now, outside the chip shop, and then one at the War Memorial. And we used to ring the phone boxes to see who was out around the village, because there would always be somebody hanging around outside the chip shop, or if it was the chip shop then it probably wasn't even the chip shop then, it was a sewing shop.
I think it was a sewing shop. So
and there'd always be somebody hanging around up the War Memorial, so we used to get ring the phone box to see who was out before we walked down. That's lazy, that, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It is lazy.
That brings me on to the next question about what are some of the places you remember in the village, especially ones that aren't there now?
Well, we were on about this earlier, weren't we? The two I can remember.
There's one place in the village that I'm not sure whether it is there now or not, but it used to be, and it was a collection of concrete pipes.
Oh, they're not there now. They took them away.
And these concrete pipes were probably about 6 foot in diameter, which is about 2 meters in diameter.
You used to sit in them.
You could sit inside, and there were big drainage pipes, big sewage pipes, and they were over Walkfield, somewhere near where the cricket scoreboard now is, in that corner somewhere over there.
Yeah.
and there was about 4 or 5 large pipes of about 2 metre diameter, and there was one smaller one that would be about 1.5 metres. And that was a very important meeting point for everybody.
We used to spend hours over there, didn't we?
From school you could say, go across the pipes, meet you at the pipes later on, and you would go across, and there'd perhaps be 10 or 15.
Well, there was no park there, was there then?
No, there was no
just
swings.
a field.
No swings, no slides.
There was no actual park.
And these pipes, to be able to sit inside these huge concrete pipes, if it was raining, obviously you were dry, but you were in there, you could talk, you could meet, you could have discussions about stuff, you could play. We used to play war games in there, we'd pretend to have, and all this stuff. A little bit like today with your paintball, but ours was just with sticks and just making the noises. That was a very important place for us as a meeting point. But that's gone now, you say.
That's good. The pipes aren't there. Well, no, because I can remember them being removed. Took them away. But I mean, there's a few. Are you on about like businesses and things like that have changed as well? I can remember we were on about it earlier, weren't we? Bisbell's.
Oh yeah, Bisbell's. That's no longer. That was a magnet factory.
Yeah, Johnson's. The lorry
in Furlong Lane.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
Remember that being down there.
It was on the corner of Furlong Lane and Fox Lane.
Yeah.
Used to be a transport yard, and there were big lorries in there. About 4 or 5 of these big lorries.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure they would be allowed in the village today.
No, it's
it
was like an old shed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like a big old shed.
Big old yard full of lorries that were in and out all the time. But I don't think it would be allowed in the village anymore.
No.
British Legion's changed.
That's moved now, because that used to be down Wellfield Road, opposite where I used to live.
And where the British Legion is now used to be a transport cafe.
Oh yeah, was it Tree?
It was called
Tree Cafe.
It was called the Tree Cafe. It was called the Ace Cafe at one time.
Mum worked at it there at one time.
That was a transport cafe where lorry drivers used to use A38. They would stop, and some of them would stop overnight, but they would stop for a cup of tea or a piece of toast and that type of thing. And that was another place where I used to meet regular. When I was a little bit older, I'd be about 19 or 20 and had a motorbike.
And it was a happy eater. After the Tree Cafe,
he did, that's right, he did. It become a happy eater.
Because we used to go down in the Happy Eater and have a cup of coffee.
It became a happy eater. When it was the Tree Cafe or the Ace Cafe, and it was a transport cafe, inside they used to have pinball machines. And they'd have these pinball machines. There'd be 3 or 4 pinball machines and a couple of one-armed bandits, and then the very first Space Invader.
Pac-Man.
Well, it was even before Pac-Man. I mean, Pac-Man was about 1980. I think the first Space Invader was about 1978, and they used to have those in there. So to be able to go and sort of get together a few 10-pence pieces to be able to go and play these games, even though I was 17, 18 and had a motorbike, we didn't have a lot of money. It wasn't something that we had, but to be able to go and play on these pinballs. There was one particular pinball that I was particularly good at, and I could get replays quite. And some of the younger children, 11, 12, 13, would come to me when I was about 18 or 19, and they would say, if we give you 10 pence, Malcolm, would you put some replays on? Because they would only get one game for 10 pence, so I'd take their 10 pence, and I would play the game, and I'd probably put 4 or 5 replays. And then I'd go and sit down and have a cup of tea, and then they would play, and they'd be able to play 4 or 5 games. So there was a period in about 1979, 1980, when I was playing on these pinball games, and I was a little bit of a hero too, which was quite nice in its own way.
Pinball wizard.
Pinball wizard for a while. I was. That was a good hero. Yeah. But that's now the British Legion now. That's now gone. So.
And then there was, we had Barker's. But that's not long gone, has it? Then there was a sewing shop where the chip shop was.
There was 2 Barker's shops. There was 2 grocery shops.
Barker's was up the other end, and that was also a video shop.
That's right. It did become you had Dickinson's shop first.
Oh, and Dickinson's, at the
side of Kent's Bridge.
Yeah.
That's where the original school used to be, on the alleyway into Walkfield. That's where the original school was.
Oh.
Which would be the one where Grandpa used to go to. But there used to be a shop there, and about 100 yards further down was another greengrocer's shop. And then at the other end of the village, near the garage, near Leavers, was another. But there was 2 Barkers.
Yeah.
There was 2 Barkers at the time.
And then obviously the post office, which was still there. And then
Horsley's was another shop that was next to the post office.
What was the one opposite?
Was that called Paget's?
No, the one opposite the paper shop. Hearts. where
Oh,
you could
that's
buy
right,
all
yes.
the back,
Yeah.
like tools
All your bike
and
stuff and
bike bits and stuff like that.
yeah.
That's the hairdressers now, isn't it?
I don't know. It's actually opposite the co-op in the village.
Yeah, it's the
I'm sure it's a hairdressers or
Yeah.
as it wasn't a Chinese ones.
It's behind it.
Right.
And there was a hairdressers down Wellfield Road, 17 salon, and there was, not that I'm an expert on hairdressers, and there was a hairdressers down opposite the surgery, Top Knots.
I would confess I don't think I've ever been to a hairdresser's. I can remember my father used to rush me off to Burton-on-Trent for a haircut every now and then.
To the barbers.
Yeah, although when I was 16 I think my hair was probably as long as yours.
Mine, yeah,
I think.
yeah,
But
I've
then
seen photos.
in that era that was probably
Yeah.
the time when it was that long.
And Leavesley's had the garage behind it. Is that still there?
I think the garage is still there. I think there's a couple of units being used.
But that was
I
more of a
wouldn't-
garage, wasn't it?
It certainly was, yeah. Well, it used to sell cars.
It did, didn't it?
It used
Yeah.
to sell, Leaves used to
Yeah.
sell cars. Actually, I had, I think it was a Rover
That's right, yeah.
dealer,
Yeah.
I think. It was a Rover dealer, so.
How has the village changed since your childhood?
For me,
Going to bypass.
yeah,
Gone
that's
about.
right. They built a bypass in our time as well, because the main road now where it goes sort of from Kings Bromley past Orrus onto the new bridge, that was, as a child, that wasn't there. That was never there.
No.
So a lot of traffic used to go through the village. However, for me, the village has changed because I moved out in 1996.
You're the same as me then.
Was it a bit later than that? No, about 1996 when I moved out of the village. And I remember it being a busy village with lots of people, but not as busy as it is today. When I actually come back to the village now to visit my father, I'm amazed how many cars there are parked in Main Street. And sometimes to get through from where the Chippy is to perhaps
Yeah.
where the Georgian Dragon is can be sometimes a bit of an in and out swing because there's so many cars parked up. As a child, that never really was a significant factor there. There wasn't that many cars,
Wasn't as busy, was it?
although it was the main route through. But parking was never an issue. It always seems to be an issue now, parking in the village.
I can always remember when we used to go to Burton or Lichfield, I used to remember thinking, God, when I drive, I'm never going to be able to do this. Because you used to come from either or, and you used to have to, if you come from Burton, you had to cut across the dual carriageway straight into Wellfield Road. There was no slip road, all it was the A38 with a gap in the middle.
Yeah.
And if you were going to Lichfield, you came out of Wellfield Road or Main Street, sat in the central reservation to get into the traffic, which is something you couldn't do now, but obviously the volume of traffic has changed a lot. And the village has grown, hasn't it? I mean,
Immensely, yeah.
there's a lot of new houses here since I left, and I've only been left, well, not even 20 maybe years nearly, but there's a lot of new houses and it's got bigger. I think it's still got the village atmosphere, a lot of it, but there's a lot of growth, isn't there? It's
Yeah,
got bigger.
I took a walk about 3 months ago before Christmas, sort of around the sort of church area of the village, and obviously all where Orrus Mill used to be is now all houses, and it's all a big iron gate, and it looks very protective. And then when you go a little bit further over Gaskell's Bridge, it looks like they're building some houses further on behind what was Tom Miller's farm and that sort of area. So the village seems to be extending that way. And then Somerville Road was only half built on, and now it's the other side as well.
It's
another
expanding
area.
out, isn't it?
Yeah. And I believe they've built houses between Walkfield and Fox Lane.
Yeah.
And what we used to call the Donkey Field.
The Donkey Field, yeah.
I believe there's houses there now, so it has grown in the amount of people that are in the village.
Yeah.
I think you just answered my next question about which roads, houses and buildings have been built or altered.
Which is, because with the A38, that's obviously altered. All the roads,
Well,
the new houses.
the A38 has altered dramatically because
the bypass.
all of the access points to the A38 used to be just direct T-junctions. There was no slip roads. I mean, Fox Lane, where Fox Lane is now, I don't think you could walk down Fox Lane now it looks overgrown. You can't take cars up there because there's a
No,
gate.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
that used to be a main road out of the village, Fox Lane. You should take to the A38, and you would get to the end of the A38, and you would have to be, well, you'd have to be very careful because you would be crossing two very busy roads.
Yeah.
If you were turning right to go to Lichfield, you'd be looking at all the traffic that was coming towards Burton.
It's horrible.
And you'd have a little space in the middle of the reservation. You'd have to pull across and then stop again. And then you'd be looking this way and the traffic was coming. But that's now, you can't get in that way. The only way to access the A38 is either it leaves us onto the slip road,
Yeah.
or the two islands that are on top of the bypass bridge. But prior to that, you had to get on the A38. Very dangerously, wasn't it? Very
Because
dangerous.
before the bypass there was the Rodditch, and you'd walk from the village, and the Rodditch is still there, but you have to get to it from the other side, I think now, and it's just a lane. And you used to be able to. I don't know whether you could drive down.
Well,
but you can't now.
I can remember as well where Leaves's garage is now. If you were on the main street coming out of the village, you would come to what was the A38. You could go straight across, and across the level crossing. That was a
Yes,
road you could go straight
was,
across.
yeah.
That was a road to Tamworth,
Yeah,
and that was again a busy road that you had to cross over. There was lots of accidents there.
that was the main before they built the
Before they built the
but-
bypass,
yeah.
yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And another aspect as well, the slip road that actually runs along the A38 from where the British Legion is now to Leaves's, the actual slip road, then the A38 on the outside. That first slip road used to be the main A38. They actually had to put another carriageway further out because that's where all the traffic. So all those houses that were on the A38 used to have to back out onto a fast-moving 70-mile-an-hour dual carriageway, which again was another dangerous point.
It's hard to visualise that now as well. But they built the bypass. Was it 85?
I can't remember, Sharon.
I can remember it being built, and this one being built, and quite well. I'm sure it was in the 80s. It was built.
I can remember playing on it
When it was-
and have a look at it, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
like to say whether I
No.
was still being a playful 25-year-old and doing it, or
He'd have been down the
I'd have
pub
to go and have a look at the sign, but I can remember.
Yeah, you'd been down the Crown then.
Yeah. It was always a great thriller. Another aspect of sort of childhood fun in the village was to find new houses that were being built, because they were never fenced off. You can actually go and play in them, so to be able to go and play at night time and to sit in the diggers or climb up the scaffolding and all that type of thing.
I know,
That was
yeah,
always another
like
great
that.
adventure as a 15-year-old.
We used to go up the tower at Fradley instead,
Yeah.
which isn't there anymore either, I don't think. I hope my dad doesn't see this.
I'm sure he will see. I'm sure he will see parts of it. Is it? Is
Yeah,
that okay?
is that it?
More than Bennett.
Did we answer everything? Oh, God.
They'll only read it and leave you snippets, don't worry.
I hope so.